Good morning, music theory. We are in week 4, I believe, of our theory videos. Um, so, what we're going to do today is I'm actually going to split the video into 2 parts. The first part is for everybody to do, and then the second part is going to be a little bit more advanced. So, the part for the second part is going to be a little bit more optional. Okay, so what I'd like to start with today is one, make sure go back and watch the other videos as we've been talking about cadences, we've been talking about um, mistakes that you could make in part writing and those kinds of things. Okay, there's a lot of information in those first few videos, so make sure you're checking that out and doing some of the examples there before you try to jump into this. Okay. All right, so what we're going to do today is we're going to try to do this a little bit interactive, and I'm going to be working through some short part writing things with you. Okay, so we're going to look at a couple of different just common progressions, and in those common progressions, I'm going to show you my process as it comes to trying to figure out things. Okay. All right. So what I'd like to do first is we're going to start, and again, I don't have my staff paper with me. Okay. Well, I could print some out, but most likely you got this kind. All right. If you just have blank paper, you can make your own and stuff like that. But I'm just going to use this paper right now just to show you that you can do this on your own. So here's what I do. So I got my top, okay? I leave the middle here open for C. And then I come down here to the bottom because you are going to need both staffs. Okay, you're going to have to make a grand staff, not just the one. Okay? So now, whether you want to actually draw out all your lines or not, that's up to you. For me, I'm not going to draw them all out because that's a waste of time for what we're doing here. All right, so I've made it this way, and now I'm just going to use the lines on the page in order to create what I want. Okay? All right, so the first progression we're going to do, fairly simple progression, actually the most simple progression, is we're going to go from a 1 to a 4 to a 5, and I will also show you 5, 7, back to a 1. Okay, so this is going to be our progression here. Okay, now I'm going to pick C major. I want you to pick something different, but it does need to be a major key for this example. Okay, so I've got my major 1 in C major, major 4, major 5, and we'll talk about putting a 7 in there as well into the 1. Okay, so this is the most common progression. What we're going to do is we're going to create that progression. Then we're going to see how we can add some things into it to make it a little bit more interesting. And then I'm going to show you a little bit of a harder, or not really harder, but a longer progression. Okay? All right, so in C major, what I'm going to do for me as I'm going through my process is I'm going to put in on each of these chords what chord I'm on. All right, so my 1 chord is going to be a C major chord, C, E, G. My major 4 is F major, F, A, C. My 5 is G major, G, B, D, with an option for an F natural. That's my 7. And then ending back on C major, C, E, G. Now, some of you are at a level where you don't need to necessarily write these all out. This is just another way to make sure that you are staying on track. Okay? All right, now for right now, let's assume there are no inversions. Okay? So what I would start with is the bass line. All right? Because if you have the progression written out here, right? If you're given the progression and you know the progression you want, then the bass notes are actually already written for you, right? So what I would do is I'm going to go ahead and write my notes. All right, C, and right now rhythm is not what we're looking for at this exact moment. We'll do that another time. F, G, C. Okay, so I've got my 4 notes here in this progression: C, F, G, and C. Okay, 1, 4, 5, 1. All right, so now what I would do next is I would then go to the soprano line, the melody line. Okay? Now, here's what you don't want. You don't want to just copy this and put it up there. Okay? So you've got this progression in your head. Now, using these notes here, what you're looking to do is to create the melody that you want. Okay, now if we were composing, for real and trying to compose a song, a lot of composers will start with the melody in mind and then try to harmonize underneath, and that forms the progression. Okay, or trying to create the progression, but for our purposes here, we're going to go from the progression. Okay, so what I'm going to do is one of the things we talked about in the cadence episode is I wanna end this with an authentic cadence. Okay, so I've got my 5-1. Neither is an inversion, and to make it a perfect authentic cadence, I'm gonna put that the tonic in the melody. Okay, so I know that I want to end that way. All right, so from there, I can go ahead and figure out what I want my melody to be. Okay, now I'm going to make this kind of boring, just honestly. So we're not going to go too crazy here. All right, so let's just say, and it's only 4 notes, so it's not like we're going to get, a masterpiece melody necessarily in 4 notes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to work my way up the scale. Okay, so I have here the G of my CEG, the A of my FAC, the B of my GBD, and then the tonic C. Okay, now from there I've got my 2 inner parts. Now here's where you have to be very careful about your inner parts. For what we're doing here, we want to be very careful to not let the alto line go below the tenor line or the tenor line go above the alto line. We're going to try to keep them very even. Okay? Now, one of the things you can do, because obviously we have 3 notes in essence and 4 parts. So it is possible to double on some of the notes and do things like that. Okay? But again, as we're going through this, we want to make sure that we're staying away from those parallel fifths and parallel octaves and things like that. Okay? Now you can see in my melody, one of the things I'm taking advantage of was what we talked about in one of the others is this 7 here. That this, even though it's not the 7, it's the 3rd of this chord, it is the 7th of C major. And that leads me to the 1. Okay, so these are just things that I'm keeping in my head as I'm trying to make this as simple and as pure as possible without trying to mix it all up with other things. Okay? All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this one with you. All right, so for me, I would do the tenor line next. Alto, tenor doesn't make any difference. I'm a tenor, so I'll do the tenor line next because altos are not that important. So what we're going to do is this. So I've got C and G. So, I can double up any of those notes, and I'm going to need an E in there. Okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to put another G here for the tenor. Okay? And then from there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, and I'm going to go ahead and put some stems on these just to make sure that we're keeping our parts separate. Okay, so as you look in the different staffs, you're putting stems to show who's who. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to double up this F in the tenor line. Okay, then I'm going to move to the B here. Okay, and then I'm going to end on a G. Okay, so I'm moving from G to F to B back to G. All right, and that's going to be my tenor line. All right, so then I look at the alto line. Now, if you look at it, it's not necessarily just process of elimination, but you do want to make sure that you get the quality of all the chords in there. You don't want to just leave notes out. Like, we look at this first chord, so I got C's and G's. Well, I don't want to leave out the E at this moment, because what that does is if I leave out the E, it leaves it a little ambiguous as far as the tonality. I know I'll be in C, but without the E in there, it could be C minor. I could play a C and G in a C minor chord. All right, so I can put my E here, okay, in my alto line. All right, so I have F and A. So C is a natural thing that I want to probably put in there. So I can go down to the C. Okay, now I've got G's and B's. So here's the thing. Now, for this version, I'm not going to put the 7 in right now. I'm just going to do it as the triad. So I can go to my D. And I know this is starting to look a little odd because I don't have all the lines. Okay, but the lines are still the same. And then end on the E. Okay, so here I have a progression moving through. All right, so I got C major, then I got my F major, G major, and then C major. All right, and I've created a bass line, a melody, all from the progression of 1, 4, 5, 1. All right, now from there, and I'm going to use a pencil for this part, because now what I'm going to do is just try some different things as I'm going through this. Okay, so let's say the first thing, let's say I want to create a 5/7 instead of a 5. Okay, now what that would probably mean is I'm not going to be able to double the B anymore. Okay, because I have 4 parts and I need to cover all 4. So let's assume that I keep the G and the B on my outer parts, and I'm just going to work on these inner parts. Okay, so what that would do is, I could put an F in the alto. Don't tell me I got a pencil that doesn't work. It looks like it. I grabbed the one thing in my house that didn't work. So I'll write it lightly. So you could say, I could put an F in the alto and maybe move, so F for the alto and maybe a D in the tenor. Now, the problem is when you do that, you're then looking at a tenor line that's jumping from an F to a D back to a G, which is awkward. Okay, it's a big leap for the kind of thing that we're doing. So when you want to go back and you want to go, okay, I want to do something a little bit more to give a little bit more color, to do something else, you're probably going to have to work your way backwards once you go, okay, so I want to do that. Because again, you're going from an E to a C to an F in the alto line, also a little bit weird. Okay, so what you're probably going to want to do is you would have to rewrite those inner parts to make it match what you want to do. So if I was rewriting it, and I'm sorry, it's getting a little sloppy, but if I was rewriting it, instead of having the alto go from E to C to F, if I know I want that 7th in there, what I could do is I could go E to F and then anticipate it with that F. So then all of a sudden now I've got this note that has been the same, and it's going from being the tonic to being the 7th. Okay, so then what I could do is, instead of doubling the F and the tenor, I could have the tenor go to that C. So it's going from G to C, instead of from G to F. Okay, so then what that does is it goes, the tenor is now going from G to C up to the D, which makes a lot more sense. Okay, so then, and it might change what you want to do at the end as well. Okay, you might want to do the same D to G. It's not that big of a deal, even though it is a leap. It's a fifth, so that's not gonna bother that many people, tenors especially. I mean a fourth down. Sorry, it's a fifth up. And then the alto could still end on that E. Okay, so that's a way you can go back and change some of those things. Now let's say that what you want to do is do this progression twice. Okay, and the second time what you want to do is you want to put a little bit extra in it. Okay, you want to throw maybe a non-chord tone in there. Okay, so what you could do is, as you're looking at this, you go, okay, man, I want to put a non-chord tone in. And so you got to think in your head, so what kind of non-chord tone? Do I want that neighboring tone, the passing tone? Do I want it to be, the appoggiatura, all these kinds of things? So here's what I would suggest for me. What I would suggest is starting fairly simple, the neighboring and the passing tones. The passing tone's probably the simplest of the non-chord tones. Okay, so what I would do is I would find a line in here that would that moves by a third or a skip, and then put in a passing tone in there. Okay, so let's say like, let's see, G to C. Well, there's not a lot of things in there that add to that. I kind of worked my way out of a passing tone. I would have to put in like 16th notes in order for it to be a passing tone. So let's do this. Let's do a suspension, okay, or to help us get into these other places. Actually, this is going to be more of a retardation as we're getting there, because what I can do is, let's say I want to put in a non-chord tone here. Okay, so what would happen is, let's say I want to do this. Okay, I go, okay, my melody, I want my melody to move here in eighth notes. Okay, so what happens there is all of a sudden now you have a B as a part of this F major chord. Now, the B has no business in the F major chord. It changes it just a little bit. You're adding kind of that fourth note. Okay, but what I have done is I have created a way to move up, and then the B becomes a chord tone. Okay, so that's just another way I can do that. Let's say I want to, let's find another spot. Sorry, it's getting a little hard to read. So let's say maybe in the bass line. Let's do that. So in the bass line, let's say I'm here on my F. Okay. And what I want to do is I'm going to change the F. No, that's a bad idea. Sorry, this is too sloppy for me to figure out exactly what I want to do. So here's what you're gonna want. One is to do it in pencil. Sorry, my pencil wasn't working. And then go back and try to figure out some of these things. Okay, so trying to figure out what you want that melody to be. All right, maybe you want the melody to do some different things, like move down here to an A. Okay, like that. So again, you got an A as your non-chord tone. Okay, and then what you want is you want to end this in a little bit of a different way and end it with some kind of suspension. Okay, so you want to go from A up to the D, which would be the ninth of this chord, and then have it resolved. Now, it no longer is the same kind of cadence, but this is what I want my melody to be. Okay? All right, so here's what I want you to do. What I want you to do is to create your own. Okay? Not in C major. Pick a different key. Any major key will do. Okay? And I want you to use these 4 chords, 7 if you want, and start simple. Okay? Start simple. Don't start by trying to throw in all kinds of crazy stuff. Don't put it in 6/8, Seth and Madeline. Just block chords. Okay? Now, that's one. That's practice. The second thing I want you to do is you are going to create one that's a little bit longer, even though the chords are not more difficult. Okay, so what you're going to create is what's called a standard 12-bar blues pattern. Okay, now in a 12-bar blues pattern, the progression that you need is 1, 1, 1, 1. Okay, so that can be 4 beats of 1. That can be 4 measures of all being a 1 chord. It's what you want. Okay, the next 4 measures are 4, a major 4, major 4, major 1, major 1. Okay, so 1, 1, 1, 1, 4, 4, 1, 1, and then 5, 4, 1, 5. Okay, and you go, well, wait a minute, are we ending on a 5? Well, that's okay. The idea is that you could repeat it and keep going. Okay, now this is a 12-bar blues, 12-bar blues pattern. So what you can do is this could be 12 measures, it could be 12 beats, but what I want you to do is to play around with this and see what you could create. Okay, so you see it's the same 4 chords. Okay, same 4 chords. All right, and if you want to know what it sounds like, go look up Hound Dog by Elvis. Okay, that is actually in a 12-bar blues patterns, as is many of the songs that you know. The progressions are just very slow, and what that means is, you know, it's in measures. Okay, ba da ba da da da, 1 1 ba da ba 1, and you know it just moves that way. All right, so you can do the same thing and start creating your own. And again, this is just using these. Okay, and you can start doing that on your own. All right, so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to post this in Google Classroom. All right, this is practice. This is the assignment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in Google Classroom. I'm going to try to find some staff paper that you could print if you want. If you don't have access to a printer, you can just do it on this page like I did. Okay? And what I want you to do is come up with something using this progression. Okay, now again, it could be 12 beats. It could be 12 bars. Now, if you do it in 12 bars, you're probably going to want to, you know, each one of these chords will be 4 beats. So the stuff in the measure, you know, there's where you can use some of your non-chord tones in those measures. So let's say if we're in C major and I'm sitting here on C, E, and G, but my melody goes from C to D to E to F to G, and it does all those things in that measure. Well, those I'm using passing tones to get to all these chord tones. Okay, let me show you what I mean. So let's say I'm in C major. Okay, so I have 4 beats. Okay, I have 4 beats in my measure, and everything is going to be a 1 chord. Okay, so again, this is not these 4. Don't confuse this. This is not all 4 of these. This is one measure of them all being a 1 chord. Okay, so let's say I'm gonna do letters instead of notes just to save some time. So let's say I just keep I'm gonna keep that C on the bottom. Okay, so I keep it as a 1 chord. So I got a whole note. Okay, or 4 quarters, 2 halves. This is where the rhythms, you can do some different things. Okay, so let's say I want my melody to be C, D, D, C, F, E, D, C. Okay? Ba da 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 dee da dee da. That's just what I want the melody to be. Alright, so obviously this, and this, those are my non-chord tones. Okay? Now, I still have chord tones here on every beat. I'm just using those as neighbors and passings and some appoggiatura and some things like that. Okay? So then I can do the same thing. Let's say I want the alto line to move with this line. Okay? So I could do something like C, B, B, C, so that, let's say these two are the same C. So instead of going up, I'm going down. Okay, so these are some of the things that you can play around with as you're trying to create these bars, and this could be 1 bar. Okay, yes, this is a longer melody. It's 12 bars, but it gives you more room to play around with. And again, don't do it in C major. I'm just doing that to make it an easy example. Okay? All right, so what I want you to do is you're going to use this in order to figure out a way to kind of write your own thing. This is going to be your major project. Okay? This is going to be the one that I'm grading. This is going to be the one that's going to count as your quiz grade. Okay? So it's using the things that you know in order to create your own. Now, if you want to keep repeating it, do so, but I don't want you to add anything right now. This is just a 12-bar blues example. Okay? Now, I'm going to move into the second part. This is part 2 of the video. This is for if you're wanting to be a little bit more advanced. This is not going to pertain to this specific project. What it's going to pertain to is some kind of deeper things you can do. Okay? All right, so for the more advanced, what I would like to talk about today is key changes. Okay? Some of you, have you been writing some of your own things, you've been asking about how to transition from key to key. All right? So I want to talk a little bit about this, and I'm going to use the book. I'm going to show you some pages in the book for some different things. Okay? So with key relationships, what you're looking for is a transition from one key to the next. Okay? The 3 most common ways to transfer from key to key, okay, is the relationship between the keys. All right? So the first one is kind of silly, but it's still a technically a key change. Most of you are instrumentalists, and it would make a very big difference on your instrument, which is enharmonic equivalence. Okay, so let's say you're in E flat major, and then you move into a D sharp major. Okay, which is not technically a key signature. So let's say C sharp major, moving into D flat major. Okay, now as a singer, that makes no difference to me whatsoever. The notes are just a little bit different on the page. They look different, but the sound did not change because they're in harmonic equivalence. Now, as an instrumentalist, if I'm going from 7 sharps to 5 flats, that makes a pretty big difference to what I'm doing. Okay, but that is a way you can key change on the page in order to make that change. Now, that's going to lead to some of the other ones we're going to talk about. You go, why on earth would I want to key change from a sharp to a flat or an enharmonic? Well, there is a reason why, and it's has to do with the transitions of what you want to do. You're leading up to other things. Okay. Second, relative keys. Okay, a relative key is when you go from the same letter, major to minor. Okay, so C major, which is all natural, the relative, excuse me. Oh, I'm so sorry, I said the wrong thing. Cut that. I skipped the term. Parallel. Sorry. Parallel keys is when you go from the same letter from major to minor. Okay, so you're running parallel C to C. So you could go from C major with no flats, no sharps to C minor with 3 flats. And that's a key change that you can more or less do whether you're actually changing the key signature or you're just putting some flats on your notes. Okay, so that's an easier transition if you're just going from C major to C minor. So let's say, you are in C minor, and y'all know that the 5 chord is going to be major, usually no matter what. So then all of a sudden, you throw an E flat in there, and you go from a 5/7 to a minor 1, and all of a sudden you've changed keys. Okay, so by changing that key, then the next step that you take is the next part of your song, maybe the next line is all in C minor. Okay, and then all of a sudden you can lead up and use that same 5/7 and go back to major, so that you're kind of going through parallel universes there, major to minor, and without having to do too much different. Okay, third is relative. And I apologize for saying relative earlier. Relative is changing keys based off the same key signatures. Now, this is one that most of you understand more because of your circle of fourths and fifths. So this would be moving from C major to A minor. All right, now the trick is here. This one can be a little bit tricky because the key doesn't change on the page. Okay? What changes on the page is the chord progression. So let's say you're going along in C major and all of a sudden you end up with a whole bunch of minor sixes. And you're like, why in the world do I have all these minor sixes? And it goes from minor 6 to, a minor 4 and things like, like this doesn't make sense. That probably means that you change keys. Okay, because that minor 6, that A minor chord, is a 1 chord in the minor key. Okay, so all of a sudden you've moved to A minor without changing anything. Now, a telltale sign is if I was in C major and all of a sudden I started seeing some G sharps thrown in. Okay, accidentals are a very easy way to tell that you're trying to change keys, because literally you are playing a note or singing a note that doesn't belong in the key. Okay, now could those be non-chord tones? Yes, they could. Okay, but you're looking for those three numbers. Okay, 3, 6, and 7. Remember, those are the three that can change back and forth between major and minor. So let's say all of a sudden that 7 is raised. Okay, I start seeing more G sharps. And in C major, that doesn't really make sense. You go, oh, it's like a C augmented chord. It's a 1 augmented. That's true. But then all of a sudden it goes from an augmented 1 to a minor 6. Maybe that augmented 1 was to lead you to a minor 1. Okay, do you see how you can use these transitions? All right, now if you're having trouble with this or you're not sure, you have a question, that's what the afternoons, even though it's mostly for band, you know, that 2 to 3 o'clock area, or anytime you just want to jump in, I'm more than happy, Ms. Green, we're more than happy to come answer some of these questions. Okay, so there are 3 ways for you to change keys. Okay, now the other one is kind of a standard way to change key is by moving into closely related keys. Okay, so what we just did was in harmonics, which changes by more than being closely related. It's a lot of difference, but the tones are actually the same. Okay, parallel means that we're changing the key but not the letter, and relative means we're changing the letter but not the key. Now, for most of you, as you are going into key changes and listening to pop songs that have massive key changes in it, most of those are created on closely related keys. What that means is that the key change is moving within 3 sharps or 3 flats. All right, so again, our circle. So from C major, you know, 1 flat, 1 sharp. So I could go from C major to F or G, 2 flats, 2 sharps, B flat or D, 3 flats, 3 sharps, which would take me to E flat and A major. Okay, so those are kind of in the scope of how you could change keys. Now, the way to get there is totally different, and obviously, the more flats and sharps you add, the harder the change and the more awkward the change could be. All right, so let's say I am trying to move from C major to F major. Okay, so that's a change of 1 flat, which is B flat, obviously. So as I'm going along in C major, and I'm doing different things, what I'm trying to do is create a chord that makes sense in both C major and F major. Okay, now you go, well, that's not going to work because there's no B flat in C major. And you're correct. However, by creating that accidental, I'm creating a chord that is a possible chord. It might not be diatonic, but it is a chord in C major that leads me to the next chord. Okay, so the most common way, okay, if I'm trying to get to a major 1 in F major, okay, major 1 in F major, which obviously I'm going FAC. Okay, so the most obvious way to move to that 1 is from a 5 or a 5-7. So the 5-7 in F major, 5-7 in F major, is C major. Yes. All right. So what would I need in order to make this a 5-7? A B flat. And that gives me my dominant 7 chord. Okay? So all of a sudden now I throw a B flat in there. as I'm going through, and this is what we would call a pivot chord. All right, so in C major, this is actually a 1-7 in C major. Okay, so the C is the root. I got my C, and let's just say I have G and actually no, let's go B flat in the tenor, and let's go G, E, and G. Okay, so let's just say that's my chord, C, B flat, E, G, which would be a C major minor 7, okay, which is a 1-7 in C major and a 5-7 in F major. Okay, so do you see how by adding the B flat here, I can create a chord that exists as a 7 while creating a diatonic chord for the next key? All right, so then from there, you know, I move to F, C to F. All right, and let's say I go from the B flat to the C. Okay, I move from the E to the F and the G to the A, and all of a sudden I have moved from a C7 to an F1, and now without even using the B flat in this chord, I'm in F major. Okay, this is the pivot. This is where I'm looking. Okay, so by using that, I can move this way. Now, one of the reasons why the circle works for us, the circle of fourths and fifths, is because I can use those chord progressions 1 to 4 and 4 to 5, 5 to 1, 4 to 1, and things like that. And that's why closely related work. Okay, where I can move from a C to a G by moving from fives and fifths. Okay, or from C to F and moving in that way. Okay, because I could move from C to G in the same kind of way where I'm adding that F sharp, so I can create some chords in that same kind of way. So let's say, you know, I'm going to use, if I'm going to try to go that way, what would make a little bit more sense, if you think about it, what's the other chord that leads to 1? Okay, my 7, right? So a 7 in C major is that B diminished. Yes? So that's B, D, F. Okay? Now, all of a sudden, I throw an F sharp in there. Now, no, it's no longer diminished, but it's still a 7 chord. Okay? And then all of a sudden, I turn that into GBD. All right? Where I could use the F sharp as kind of a non-chord tone that leads to the G. And then all of a sudden, it changes into this next key. So there's lots of things that you can do. Now, some of this is going to take you listening and going, you know, that doesn't sound quite right. Like, that didn't transition the way I wanted it to. Like, I know I want to get to this, but I'm not sure how to get there. And it's going to take some time for you. You can try some inversions. You can try some different things in order to create the sound that you want. All right? But the further away you get, the more awkward it becomes. So you want to be very, very careful when it comes to those things. All right? So here's a quick little grid in the book for you to see. So you see here I got starting keys, and you see, you know, going from these different things, you can figure out parallels, you can figure out relatives, you can figure out the different flats and things you can get to. Okay, so you can take a screenshot of that to go that way. All right. Now, this is what we were just talking about. So this is it written in a different way. Okay, a common chord modulation. All right, so you see here in the first key, B flat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so your triads, B flat, C minor, D, you can read. Okay, triads in F, and then the numbers in the second key. All right, so you can see, all right, so what keys are common, or what triads are common. So my B flat major is common, D minor is common, F major is common, and G minor is common. All right, so these are ways we can use transitional chords, shared chords, common chords, to go from one key to the next. Okay, so, and here it is in minor, even though we're not really working with minor right now, but I know Tori will want to see how things work in minor since she lives in minor modes. All right, so same idea. Okay, moving from a major to a minor and finding the ones that work out. So you see the 2 in the minor 1, in the major 4, and the major 3. These are places where it can work out. Okay, so let's see it in some music. Okay, so take a look. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble seeing too. All right, so take a look here. We've got G major. We have a 1, 5, 6, 5, 1, 4, 1. Okay? Now, what happens is I'm going from G major to F major. Okay? So from 1 sharp to 1 flat. All right, that's still commonly related because it's less than a few apart. Okay? So here, this F chord is a 5 chord. I'm sorry, the C chord is a major 4 in G major and a major 5 in F major. Okay, so then my next chord is where I'm changing the notes for that one. So instead of changing the note on this chord, I'm changing it on this one. All right, because I'm finding the common chords. Okay, so take a look at that and how I can move some different things. So this is it written in 2 different ways. This one's simple. This one's a little bit more advanced. You can see how on this one it changes a few different things and it keeps going a little bit to show more of the F major. Okay, so this one it uses the B flat to transition into it. Okay, so again, you can take a screenshot of that and use some of those ideas. Okay, now here's what I'd like for y'all in your work as you're doing some different things. So again, I want you to be able to do some more advanced things. Okay, so here's what I want. What I want you to do is I want you to take this line right here. Okay, you got 2 lines, E and F. Okay, so on E, I'm showing you this. I'll take a snapshot of this so you can put it in Google Classroom. Okay, what I want you to do is this first one. You're harmonizing based on the melody. Okay, you're going to modulate to 5. The second should return to 1. Okay, then here you're going to go from the bass line. Okay, now what the bass line shows you is inversions. Remember, 6 is first inversion. Okay, 4/2 would be the third inversion of a 7 chord. Okay, and there's a couple extra things in there. I don't want to get too much into this figured bass because we haven't really covered it. I'll put a thing in Google Classroom for figured bass. Most of those are not that big of a deal. Most of them are the inversions, but some of them are sharps and naturals. So I'll take a quick screenshot of that just to describe what that's doing. Okay, so analyze the chord specifically by this figured bass, then make an arrangement for SATB. Okay, so the figured bass is actually what's going to do the key change for you. Okay, so this will help you start moving through some of those progressions and some of the key changes to do some of the things that I know that some of you are wanting to do. Okay, so I'm gonna put this all on Google Classroom. I still want more advanced folks. I still want you to do the 12 bar blues. Okay, but then I want you to take a look at this. This is a little bit harder in trying to figure out how you could transition in your compositions. All right. If you have any questions, just post on Google Classroom. You can jump in live chats in the afternoon, and we'll go over this stuff together. All right.